He tried to forget her. For 10 long years, William Thorne, the CEO of Thorne Industries, had tried to erase every trace of Alara Vance from his life. He'd moved cities, changed his number, even sold the lakeside cabin where they'd spent their last summer together. It was a futile effort. Her memory was a ghost that haunted his every waking moment and danced through his dreams at night. He remembered the day they met. He was a struggling artist then, his hands perpetually stained with paint, his heart full of dreams bigger than his wallet. She was a whirlwind of laughter and sunlight, a literature student who saw poetry in his chaotic canvases. They fell in love with the reckless abandon of youth, convinced their love was a masterpiece that would stand the test of time. But life, as it often does, had other plans. Julian's father fell ill, and the weight of a faltering family business fell squarely on his shoulders. He had to choose, his art and Alara, or his family and duty. The choice tore him apart. He remembered their last conversation, the words he'd said, sharp and cold, designed to push her away. We're from different worlds. Alara, this was just a summer fling. He'd watched the light in her eyes dim, her smile crumble, and a part of him had died with it. He'd told himself it was for the best. He couldn't drag her into the cutthroat world of corporate takeovers and boardroom battles. He'd become a man he no longer recognized ruthless, calculating, his artist's hands now signing multi-million-dollar contracts instead of creating beauty. He had everything he was supposed to want: wealth, power, respect. But his sprawling penthouse felt empty, his expensive suits like a costume, and the reflection in the mirror was that of a stranger. 10 years, a decade of regret. He'd hear a snatch of a song they used to love, or see a woman with the same fiery red hair, and the carefully constructed walls around his heart would threaten to collapse. He'd tried dating, but every woman was a pale comparison. None had her wit, her passion, her ability to see the artist hidden beneath the CEO's armor. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, while drowning his sorrows in paperwork, his assistant placed a small, elegantly wrapped package on his desk. It was from an anonymous sender. Curious, he opened it. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, was a single, perfectly preserved forget-me-not. The same kind that grew wild near their old cabin. Tucked beneath it was a small, worn photograph. His breath caught in his throat. It was a picture he'd taken of her, laughing, her hair a mess, a smudge of blue paint on her nose. It was the last photo he'd ever taken, just hours before he shattered her heart. He flipped it over. Scrawled on the back in her familiar, elegant script were 5 words that hit him with the force of a physical blow. I never forgot you, Julian. That single memory, that one photograph, broke through a decade of denial. He had tried to forget her. But one memory, one tangible piece of their past, refused to fade. It wasn't a ghost. It was a beacon. He realized he hadn't been living. He'd been surviving. The success, the money, it was all meaningless without her. Without a second thought, he grabbed his coat, barking orders at his bewildered assistant to clear his schedule indefinitely. He didn't know where she was, or what her life was like now. Maybe she was married, happy. Maybe she hated him. It didn't matter. For the first time in 10 years, Julian Thorne knew what he had to do. He had to find her. He had to tell her the truth. His search began at the university they'd both attended. The alumni office, citing privacy policies, was a dead end. He walked the old campus grounds, each corner a fresh stab of nostalgia. The library where they'd spent hours studying, the coffee shop where they'd had their first date, the ancient oak tree where he'd first kissed her. It was all so vivid, as if it were yesterday. Desperate, he sought out their old friends. Most had lost touch with Alara. They spoke of her with a fond sadness, a brilliant light that had simply vanished from their circle after she and Julian broke up. But finally, an old art professor mentioned that Alara had been deeply involved in a community arts program in a small, coastal town called Seabrook. Was a world away from the steel and glass canyons of his city. It was a charming town of cobblestone streets, salty air, and brightly painted storefronts. It felt like a place she would love. His heart pounded as he drove down the main street. And then he saw it. A small gallery and bookstore named The Painted Page. It was so quintessentially alive. He knew before he even saw her name on the sign. He parked the car, his hands trembling. He was no longer the powerful CEO. He was just Julian, the boy who had fallen in love with a girl who saw poetry in his paintings. He pushed open the door, a small bell chiming his arrival. The shop was filled with books and art, warm and inviting. And there she was. She was standing by a window, arranging a display of watercolors. She was even more beautiful than he remembered. The years had been kind, adding a new layer of grace and wisdom to her features. Her red hair was a little shorter, but it still caught the light like fire. She looked up as the bell chimed, and her eyes, the same vibrant green he'd never been able to forget, widened in shock. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air was thick with unspoken words, with 10 years of pain, regret, and longing. Julian. Her voice was a soft whisper, barely audible, but it was the most beautiful sound he had ever heard. "Ilara," he breathed, taking a hesitant step forward. I got your package." A flicker of emotion crossed her face, surprise, fear, and something else he couldn't quite name. "I shouldn't have sent it. It was impulsive." "No," he said, his voice raw. "It was the best thing that's ever happened to me." He closed the distance between them, stopping just a few feet away. "I was a fool, Ilara, a coward. Leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life. I've spent every day for the last 10 years regretting it. I told myself I was protecting you, but I was just protecting myself from getting hurt, and I ended up with nothing." Tears welled in her eyes, and he saw his own pain reflected there. "I thought you hated me," she whispered. "That I was just an inconvenience from your old life." "Never," he said fiercely. "I loved you. I never stopped loving you." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the worn photograph. This memory, it never faded. It was the one thing that kept a part of me alive. She looked from the photo to his face, her expression softening. "I tried to forget you too, Julian. I really did. I built a new life here, but you were always there, in the pages of every sad love story. In the colors of every sunset." A single tear traced a path down her cheek, and he instinctively reached out, his thumb gently brushing it away. The simple touch was electric, a jolt of connection that spanned a decade of separation. "Can you forgive me?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. Can we start again? I don't care about the company, the money. None of it matters without you. I'll sell it all. I'll pick up a paintbrush again. I just want a second chance to be the man you deserved." Ilara didn't answer right away. She looked around her little shop, at the life she had so carefully built from the ashes of her heartbreak. Then, her gaze returned to his, and a slow, watery smile spread across her face. It was the smile he had been starving to see for 10 years. "Well," she said, her voice gaining a hint of its old playfulness, "my new assistant just quit. The pay is terrible, but the view is nice." Relief, so powerful it almost buckled his knees, washed over him. He laughed, a real, genuine laugh that felt foreign and wonderful.